As the author of The Complete Idiot's Guide to Reading Body Language and founder of the Human Behavior Academy, she is one of the world's leading experts in deception detection, reading body language, and statement analysis. With more than 15 years' experience analyzing jurors, witnesses, and suspects in high-profile cases, she has been consulted as the human behavior expert for some of the world's most noteworthy trials. And now, she's going to teach you how to spot a liar in 7 seconds or less. Please welcome Susan Constantine.
Good afternoon, CrimeCon. Are you having fun? I want to hear it over here. Yes! Over here? They were pretty good. Let me hear you over here. Are we having fun? Okay, guys, last but not least, but you certainly can beat these guys. 1, 2, 3, are we having fun? Okay, well, I'll tell you about the truth of that after this whole thing, okay? So I'll tell you who really did a great job. Oh, thank you so much for having me here today. We're going to talk about how to spot a liar in 7 seconds or less. My question to you is, how many of you think you're really good at detecting lies? Raise your hand. Okay. Well, let me tell you what the research says. Research says those that think they're really good at detecting lies, the reason is because they've used those same tactics themselves so they can recognize that in other people. All righty. Well, we're going to have fun today, okay? You know, I really love to just kind of have a conversation with my audience. So it's not all about me, it's about you guys. So you're wondering, how did I start my career? Thank you for asking. So I believe I started my career when I was 15 years old. I was invited to spend the night at a girlfriend's house, and she lived in kind of a sketchy area. And my mother said, I don't like you over in that neighborhood. It just doesn't seem safe. And of course, being 15 years old, where do we go? What do we say? Don't worry about it. So I show up, and we babysat, or we were babysitting, and we're over at the lady's house, and my friend Vicky looks over at me and she says, what would you do if somebody came in and killed us? So you know what I'm thinking? I should have listened to my mother, right? So the wonderful Baptist girl she was, she says, well, if you were to die tonight, do you know if you would go to heaven? So me, I'm like, I'm going to pray, do whatever I got to do, because she's really freaking me out, right? So we babysat, no issue, and went back to her house. 2 weeks later, she asked me to babysit again. So we went over there, we went getting ready to go babysit, get a phone call from the lady we're supposed to babysit for, and she says, don't bother coming because my date stood me up. So, of course, we're bummed out because back then we were getting 50 cents an hour, right? That's big money, right? So we sat out on the front porch. It was during the summer, and I was sitting out there with 2 other friends. And lo and behold, as we're sitting out there, up pulls this van right in front of my friend's house. Pulls right up where I'm sitting. Gets out of his van and proceeds to walk down the street looking at cars in the neighborhood. And I'm going, there's something wrong with this dude, right? Something just didn't feel right. And then he disappeared. Within 30, 40 minutes later, all of a sudden, he comes dashing out between the house, my girlfriend's house, and the house next door, runs over to the van, and right then he realizes I'm sitting right there. And he looks at me, and he opens up the back of the van, he throws something in it, and he starts to peel off. It wasn't very long after that, all of a sudden I saw all these the helicopters with lights and everything else, and policemen walking police dogs in through the neighborhood. And they said, did you kids see anything? I said, oh yeah, I'll tell you, this is what he looked like. He had blonde curly hair, he had jeans on, and he had a t-shirt. The van was a carpet company, and it was white, and it said Vans Carpet Company. And then when he drove down the street, he was very frantic, and he turned his blinker on to turn left, and he went right. So I remembered all this, and I told the police officers what I saw. And I said, what happened? She says, a woman was just murdered around the corner. Soon to find out, the lady that we were supposed to be babysitting for was stabbed 21 times with a knife. Was that a premonition, or what was it? So just to let you know, I no longer leave knives out on the counter anymore, and neither does my friend. So my career really began back then, I believe, in reading people. From there, of course, I became a trial consultant. I'm not going to go through a lot of my background. You're more than welcome to look at it on the website, but it's vast. And you're constantly learning how to read people better. So that's why I love what I do, because I'm going to help you guys spot a liar very quickly. All righty. So before we get started, each one of you needs to raise your right hand and repeat after me, because you have to be sworn in. I solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. Keep your hand up and look at your partner next to you. Notice if their fingers are open or closed. Is the wristband going back, or is it slightly coming forward? All righty. Now you can put your hands down, because I'm going to tell you if the person next to you is going to tell you the truth or they're going to lie to you. So the person with their hand up like this, their fingers wide open, they will tell you the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Woo! The person with their fingers like this, their fingers are tight together, they will also tell you the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But you have to pull every word out of them. The person with the hand tilted back, shame on you. How many of you had your partner next to you with your hands tilted back? You're a bunch of liars in this room, I know it. Okay. Alrighty, on to more serious things. So let's go back here a minute. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, how you can actually use body language. So we know that people communicate in two ways, verbally and non-verbally, right? Animals do the same thing. So those are the only two areas that we communicate. Through our words, through our voice, through our facial expressions, our body language. This is how we communicate. So we can use this in all different areas. As a trial consultant, I help attorneys deselect jurors, deselect dangerous jurors. One of the most high-profile cases that I've worked on, it's been two of them. One was the Michael Jackson case. Number two, Jeffrey Epstein sexual assault case. So I had the privilege of working with one of the victims who was giving her testimony about the allegations of being recruited and groomed by Maxwell and being used as a pawn, or used as a vehicle for Epstein's pleasure. So I used my training courses to help her to be prepared for that hearing that she had to have, because she's a victim. And a lot of times what happens with victims is they tend to kind of fall in love with their capturer. It's called the Stockholm Syndrome. So when I was interviewing her, talking with her, getting her prepared for her hearing, I noticed that she just didn't have the right affect. I'm going, what's going on here? I think she's got the Stockholm Syndrome. It's where they fall in love with their capturer. So once I got her to kind of tap into some of her emotion, how it actually affected her in her life, how it embarrassed her in front of her family, how it has really affected her in relationships moving forward, she broke. Because I was able to tap into her inner soul by reading the expressions on her face and realizing that she wasn't morphing the right expression, and I had to get her to feel those emotions so she could emote. She won $3 million. She deserves every penny of it. Another big case that I worked on was on one of the Michael Jackson case. How many of you like Michael Jackson? Okay, some do, some don't. Okay, that didn't go well. All right, so anyway, so I was, raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Motown was very close by, so I was raised with Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was it for me, right? So in profile, I was asked to watch tons of video of the two guys that alleged that they were molested by Michael, because there was this big civil lawsuit. So I was hired to look at all those videos. And that case really was very interesting to me, because what I found is that so much of their story, not that it wasn't true, some of it, they bolstered and fabricated so many of the elements of it, it lost credibility. So did he or did he not sexually molest those two boys? It's inconclusive, because the victims bolstered and lied and fabricated so much of the story that all of the deception indicators were going off everywhere. So this is how we can use it. We can use it for profiling. We can use this for trial insights. We can use this for insights in just about every aspect of our business, in sales, business, HR, whether it's our children. How many of you have kids? Okay, I use, my technique. I don't recommend that you have them come home and ask them to raise their right hand and ask them to repeat after you. Okay, but it is actually a great tool to have, because you can see when your kids are off their baseline. Things are not quite right. I have a daughter who actually got sucked into predatory stuff on the internet. We have to be so careful of the internet. Here's a young girl, never had a boyfriend, really super cute but awkward, very, what I would call it is introverted. She wanted someone to love her so badly. So she went to a Catholic school, and she met this girl there, and she says, "You should try this app." She went on the app to meet boys. Well, she didn't realize there was lots of other people on that app too. Before you knew it, they got her from telling her how beautiful she is to taking all of her clothes off. And it went viral. Her phone was blowing up. She was anxious. She became suicidal. Had I not checked her phone and the phone records and noticed her behavior was off her baseline, she probably wouldn't be alive today. But quickly, and how quickly you can use these skills to pull them out of a dangerous situation. We put her into a safe house for 1.5 years, so she had no predators could ever find her again. So this stuff is serious. This is not just reading body language just for fun. I do this for a living on high-profile cases to help solve crimes. Lots of times there are videos that I need to analyze of certain suspects. Are they suspicious? I can help attorneys. I can help law enforcement in their cases, and you can too. How many of you really strive to maybe do what I'm doing right now? Does anybody want to be a body language expert? Call me afterwards and we'll talk, okay? But anyway, yeah, it's a great profession. So you can also use this to, to eliminate people, because there was a big case that was going on. I was on the Dr. Phil show. I was on his show 3 different times, and twice in person. The other time I did a podcast with him. And in one of those cases, there was a girl that went missing. Does anybody know anything about Carly Gousset? No? Well, missing Carly Gousset, she went missing when she was 16 years old, and there's lots of video that was out there to analyze, because the last person who was with her happened to be her stepmother and her father, etc. So what do people do sometimes when they're in these stressful situations, and not necessarily that they're guilty, but they start going out on the internet. So this stuff is like candy in a candy store for me, because we can analyze voice, stress analysis, and behavioral analysis, all from just a video. And I'm going to teach you what we do, okay? So you can use this to aid in an interrogation or an investigation, give them insights into, what's really going on with this particular person, profiling them. And so you can locate certain areas of deception so they can actually focus on that. See, I'm from Orlando, Florida, so I had the opportunity to sit through the entire Casey Anthony and George Zimmerman case. I was there every day. I was there with Nancy and Geraldo and Judge Janine Pirro. I was there with HLN and Inside Edition. I was the one and only go-to person. I did over 1,000 national appearances on those 2 trials. I don't know what that says about Orlando, Florida, but we certainly have a lot of crime, okay? So anyway, let's move forward here, and I want to talk to you a little bit about how behavioral analysis helped lead to a serial killer.
It's been 1 week since a 4th person was murdered.
We got to get that a little louder, guys.
The biggest clues to finding the killer? These 2 surveillance videos.
But those 2 videos and a brief description of the suspect are all law enforcement has to go on tonight. So what is it that we're missing in this video? Is it the way the suspect walks? Is it his gestures? Tonight, Sarah Rosario went frame by frame with this video with a human behavioral expert who has weighed in on plenty of high-profile murder cases.
Whether or not you live here in Seminole Heights, many of you have your own idea of who you think killed 4 people in this neighborhood. But an expert I spoke to tonight says it's not who you think it is. We've been reviewing the surveillance footage that Tampa police are using as they consider this person their prime suspect in the Seminole Heights murders. Susan, looking at this video, what would you say is the most important takeaway from it?
Well, he doesn't look like a murderer. That's the most important thing. He's very much in control of himself. His stride is very confident. He's not, he's unassuming.
You see him flipping something. What do you think that tells you of this person?
Well, that's very cavalier, very nonchalant, arrogant. It's a sense that he's kind of leading up to something very important. So just know what you're thinking and feeling is going to be exhibited through your nonverbals. So he has to be thinking what he's going to do and being very purposeful about it to go for it, and very calculated, and that's why everything about his body language has that very same methodical rhythm that we're seeing, almost kind of like a soldier.
Can you tell anything about the age of the person?
Well, this person says I've seen him running. There's no doubt that he's in good physical condition. So in my professional opinion, I think the person is younger. I would say probably either in their late 20s into their mid 30s. That would be the age range that I would be looking for.
This is another clip that Tampa police are using. It's very short. We see it here, but you say you can still tell it's the same person.
What I'm looking at is the consistency with the stride and the movement. Even though it's very pixelated, the movement, his body positioning, the way he's holding his head up is very similar to the first one. It's the same person.
This is not someone running who maybe might have heard gunshots and then was running away from it. This is someone who you think it looks like they did it.
Right, he's not frantic. So a lot of people will suspect a lot of things and they'll come to their own conclusion, but it really takes someone like myself or the police department or detectives that have analyzed human behavior and seeing patterns in human behavior, what that actually looks like. And when you see that, you start to come to a little bit clearer the difference between fight or flight response and somebody is a very purposeful run and they're running away from something. So absolutely, he is running away from something, but he is not erratic, so he's running away. Based on that analysis, people called in and they found him. He was working, I think, at a McDonald's or some sort of a restaurant based on just his behavior. Each and every one of us have a gait, a movement that we have, what foot we lead with, which hand we lead with, how we stride, our length of our strides, our angles of our body and where our head is positioned. If our feet are flat or are they more ducked? See, all of these things you may not have thought about, but all of this leads to maybe who that person is. Because in this instance, what was he worried about doing? He was wanting to get away. So he's not thinking about how I'm looking, right, in case there's some sort of hidden camera. So based on that, we were able to find who he was. And this is very nonchalant, took his keys, kind of flipped them around. You know who else did that? Jorn Vandersloot. Jorn Vandersloot, when he found that other girl that he murdered out of that casino, when he was getting ready to walk and she was leading with him, you know what he did? He did that with his keys. It's kind of like they're anticipating something big. I'm anticipating something's big about to happen, right? And those types of movements, they don't do just then, they do it in their lives. It's their DNA. So body language can speak a lot louder than words. So I'm going to walk through what are the need to know basics. One is that you need to understand, why do people lie? We know they want to get out of trouble, right? We know that. But they have, in order to detect if somebody's lying, there has to be something at stake. Great risk or great reward. The reason why that is because it causes cognitive load when they're trying to tell the story differently from what they know. There's such a high level of threat because there's either a very big payoff or they're going to get caught and spend the rest of their life in prison. So we have to consider the first thing, what is the level of stakes? If it's just an everyday lie, you know, someone stole my lunch at work, and you say, who did it? Somebody's not going to show all the physiological responses. But if it was who took the money that was out of the petty cash drawer that was in the office, now the stakes are a little higher, right? Now, what about if they're a sociopath? What about they're highly narcissistic? Would they show those stressors? Someone like Joran van der Sloot went into that bar over and over and over again. So he was able to control his behavior, so he appeared to be much more approachable. So sociopaths, because they lack empathy, sometimes can appear truthful even when they're lying, but they will mess up somewhere. They'll mess up in either their behavior or they're going to mess up in the language that they say, and I'm going to show you in a little bit how we can catch them, okay? So in cognitive load, keep in mind that the brain is really working fast, right? It's almost like this fight or flight response. So you're thinking very quick. So you're thinking, how am I going to come up with a very quick reply or an answer? Creates cognitive load, and what happens when the cognitive load builds, physiological changes happen. So when you've determined what a person's baseline, we call it baselining, I mean, when I am reading someone, I'm looking at their body from head to toe. I'm looking to see how they're tilting their head to the side. I'm looking if they're holding their arms together. Here she's holding on to her purse or her Oxygen True Crime bag. I'm scanning from head to toe. And I'm just trying to find kind of a neutral baseline. So, and then if I'm asking them a probative question that may increase their cognitive load because they know something, but they're trying to tell it differently, you might see them uncross their legs, shift, lick their lips, blink rapidly, whatever it is, okay? That's how it happens. You have to determine the baseline first. Once you've determined their baseline, we are looking for incongruencies, okay? We're looking for things that don't match up. So I see this a lot, because, you know, here we are at True Crime, we're dealing with a lot of killers here, right? You know? People ask me, are you reading me? And I said, unless you committed a crime, you're really not my customer. Okay? So I'm looking for incongruent behaviors. Does their facial expressions show sadness when they're saying they're very sad? We're going to look at Barry Morphew in a little bit, because I did a piece with Nancy Grace, which is going to be airing, by the way. Mark your calendars on May 3rd on Fox Nation. So we're looking for incongruent behaviors. We're looking for misleading or fabricated or deceptive clues in the written or in the spoken word. Because the way I have been trained and how I train others, that every word to me is truthful. And I know that shocks you, because they're telling it to me from their perception of what is truth. So I want to understand how they think, right? And now there's certain language that people use and pronouns and articles and how they phrase things will really give way of how they're actually thinking. So I'm looking at incongruent or masked facial expressions. How many of you are watching Johnny Depp right now and Amanda Heard? Isn't it really interesting? So I did a 2-hour special on Court TV. It aired last week, and so I was reading Johnny Depp's body language. Also, Amanda Heard, I'll be picking up on her next week, because now we're doing she has a chance to tell her side of the story. But look at her masked face, right? Her masked face. Johnny Depp, that is a very good example of the words matching what his story is telling, and his facial expressions, his body language, and everything is coming across very truthful. So this is great. We look for, things that mix together. So does their words match their facial expressions? Their facial expressions match their body language? Is it congruent? Because if it is incongruent, There's a reason for it, and that's what you need to look at. How many of you are, you're in relationships, right? And sometimes, and women, I got to tell you, a lot of times we do this. We give excuses for the guys we're with over and over and over again, hoping that somehow they're going to be sprinkled with some little fairy dust and they're just going to wake up and they're going to be the person you want to be. So we fall in love with the potential of somebody that will never have potential because they've given you all of the warning signs. Listen to the warning signs. This girl's over here, she's probably dating, she wants to write this down either to give her kids or somebody else, okay? So we're looking also for stress indicators in their voice. We know that when people are lying, that there are vocal tremors that can be picked up with voice stress analysis. And so I'm syncing these channels together. So I do something very unique, which is a little different than most do. I combine all three modalities: behavioral analysis, statement analysis, and voice stress analysis. If I have a big case and I've got a great video, or if I don't, and I just have a 911 call, I'm going to throw them onto the voice stress analysis expert on my team and have them analyze it, because this will provide insight to knowing where there are stressors, where they may be deceptive. Follow me? Okay. So the other thing is that know that suspects are compelled to tell you everything they know. That surprised you? Why? It's because it's so hard to lie, unless they're really good at it. If they're really good at it, they're still going to bypass some body language or something in their voice or what they say, because the right brain and the left brain collide, visual and auditory, when you're trying to lie for any length of time. So the more you get them talking, the more they're going to reveal themselves. So what we have to learn to do is be quiet and listen to them talk. Because the more they talk, the more they reveal themselves. And all you need to do is just ask little minimal encouragers like, and then so what really? And then let them answer it, and they start to give away a lot of information that you didn't even ask them. So you want to make sure you're asking these open-ended questions. So only a fragment of what they're telling you is distorted. So most of what they're telling you is truthful. What they do is they skip over, minimize very damaging information to appear truthful. That's what they do. That's why they're able to do it so seamlessly. So later on, I want you guys to sign up for the class that Phil Waters and I are doing, the interrogator, because we're going to put you through the to tell the truth game. Okay, so we're going to show you how we do it in real action, okay? So most of the story they will tell you is truthful. So you need to understand how they think. You can also learn a lot about how somebody thinks by the way they move their eyes. Now, I am not a proponent and I'm going to talk about eye accessing cues in a little bit, but if somebody's eyes tend to look up, they tend to be more visual people. If their eyes go side to side, they're just more auditory. If their head goes down, they tend to look down. It's because they're very kinesthetic, or they're tending to process information. But there is no research to back up that eye movement cues is a sign of deception. Fidgetiness is not a sign of deception. So averting eyes and eye accessing cues and fidgetiness are not in itself ways to detect if somebody's being deceptive. It may be a clue, but you've got to look and cluster these together, because that's how you're able to spot a liar in 7 seconds or less. So how does it work? I'm going to tell you. See, what happens is that we found out through stenographers that people, when they're speaking, they speak at 125 to 150 words a minute. That's normal. And the brain works 10 times faster. So beyond that 7 seconds, chances are they're already on to something else they're thinking. So you're looking for the first indicator within 7 seconds. You ask a stimulus question, one that is probative, one that would stimulate a response. When you have an inkling that maybe somebody's being deceptive, You ask them a probative question, that's when you start to see the first indicator. It might be they shift their body language, it might be that they lift their eyebrows, it might be that they lick their lips, you might see rapid eye blinking, you may see them shift their legs, they may shrug their shoulders, I don't know. It doesn't matter because there's no clue to deception. They all have to happen in clusters. Okay, so we're looking for a minimum of 3 indicators within the first, not 3 indicators, but at least 1 indicator in the first 7 seconds. And you should see 2 or 3 or more follow. We're going to look at Chris Watson just a little bit, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Here's an example. Let me go back here. What happens, as I want to share with you, is that let's go back, is that it causes leakage. When the cognitive load builds, you know the truth, you're trying to tell it differently, physiological things happen. They'll stammer, they'll stutter, their speech errors, they'll lick their lips, they'll show all kinds of different indicators that is different from their norm. When you found what their normal baseline behavior is, and then you ask a probative question, in the first 7 seconds you see 1 shift, and you'll see a multitude of them follow. If you only see 1, disregard it, means nothing. So there's no such thing as rubbing the nose, and that's a lie. In fact, you know where that comes from? When somebody is, this is the Pinocchio response, when somebody is about to lie or tell something a little bit different than from what they know to be true, what happens is that all the blood that is around the face and those capillaries rush to our outer extremities, our hands and our feet to run, because it takes us into fight or flight. It irritates all those capillaries around our face. So we do this. We start to itch around our face. Now, you lick their lips and you have rapid eye blinking, that's a cluster. Got it? Is everybody getting it so far? Okay, so I'm going to talk about... Everybody knows who this is? Well, I was hired in this case in 2013, and I was asked to analyze her before any of this stuff happened. Anybody ever see the show called The Dropout? Richard is the one who hired me. I didn't realize that he was kind of a crummy guy when I was working with him. I mean, he's a little bit of a conniver. But anyway, Richard Fritz is the guy that's right here. He's the older man. You see the actor in the middle. And what we found is that when he had me analyzing video of her back when, he was being sued by her for copyright infringement on this little blood testing device that she created. Come to find out, it didn't work. Fraud, right? Follow forward. So I pulled up all those old videos from way, way back when and said, let me analyze them again. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see what the behavior lab found. We did the behavioral analysis, we did the voice stress analysis, statement analysis, we did a 3-pronged test, and here we go. Elizabeth Holmes. This is a really interesting one. Elizabeth Holmes, she is a star. There's a story about her called The Inventor. Back in 2013, I was hired by a defendant in a case that she was suing him on a copyright infringement and regarding this blood testing device, and that he had, I guess, stolen her idea or something. Anyway, he had me watching a lot of videos and so forth back in 2013, and after I analyzed it all, and there were several different videos I looked at, when she was speaking in front of different groups, and she was able to get some big, powerful people on board with her. I mean, major league players in this country, and it ended up being a big fraud. But when I looked at the video back then, and I had to pull this all out too, because moving forward, I found out that she did commit fraud and that her device didn't work. I had to pull those back up, and I looked at it going, oh my gosh, it was right there. It was right there, because back then I said she didn't have confidence in her own device. But she's going to talk about investors, and what you're seeing up here on the right-hand side, first of all, is the Jury Lab. The Jury Lab is a technology that I had invented that is patented that will read the data points on your face, the micro-expressions. And you can see her expressions as they're morphing when she's talking. You'll see some contempt. You'll see some fear. I think there's maybe a little bit of sadness that pops in there, but don't pay too much attention to that part of it. What I want you to really pay attention to is what she's saying. There's a moment in the video where she says, I have tremendous belief that, and you'll see her hand come up here. We're going to break that down. Let's show that clip.
Or their history, but the dynamic progression and changes of these parameters over time that we can see in the expression of proteins and other variables in the blood, which when sampled more frequently can begin to describe the movie of disease progression rather than the snapshot. And we have tremendous belief that
we can stop right there. So that in itself, so if she had, Bob and Jerry, and I know you guys have broke this down, but if she really believed in her product, why is she showing so much weakness and vulnerability? She's got that pause, that hesitation. You can see it in her expression. She just kind of gets lost in it. But that right there told me back then she did not have confidence in her product. What did you find on your stress analysis?
Well, she struggled to say the word we first, and then she did the hand gesture. But in the analysis, the largest amount of stress on that whole entire statement that she made was on the word tremendous. And it's a tremendous amount of stress.
Tremendous amount of stress. But why did she use that bolstering word, Bob? Why do liars use bolstering words?
She's trying to convince the person. It's a way of trying to convince people that she believes that. And that's one of those kind of extreme words that I don't know how to describe them, but they're extreme. Yeah, they're not in here, they're this way or this way. Right. And it's in order to convince people of something that even she doesn't believe herself.
So that's the key. Did you see how fast that happened? That wasn't even like the stimulus question. We had tremendous belief that pause, hesitate, right? And if you looked at her facial expressions, I have a technology called the Jury Lab. It reads all the data points on your face, and she was showing contempt. That's moral superiority. It's actually an expression sometimes we see when people are they have an arousal when they are duping somebody. So all of this stuff, this technology that's coming forward is massive. I can't go into it right now. I have a training class. You're more than welcome to check it out afterwards here. I go into all of that stuff. Here's another one. Let's go here. Why the body never lies either.
I've exhausted every...
Let's go into Chris Watts. Now, of course, what I want you to look at this one is remember I was talking about the emotions are off? You're not going to see any stress in his forehead. You see him doing the shoulder shrugging. Anytime you see one shoulder shrugging, you literally can cancel out the words that they're saying, the pausing, the hesitations. It keeps going and going and going. And I only just shows a few of them, but there's multiple clusters in his body language.
I've exhausted every friend that I know of, and every friend that I have has called friends that Shanann has that maybe I didn't know about. And it's just it's vanished. She's not, when I got home yesterday, it was like a ghost town. She wasn't here. Kids weren't here. I have no idea where they went. And we got here, got inside, and nobody was here. Nothing.
And so I read that Shanann hadn't taken...
So he's lacking what? Urgency, right? His facial expression's very flat. Does he look like he's somebody that's really worried? No. So that was a cue for those investors going, something's just not right. So of course I analyzed all this through Nancy's as you heard some of her shows, and also in Court TV, analyzing and breaking that all down, which I go more into in my training classes. But he is such a bad liar. He really is not very good at all. I knew he's going to surrender. You're looking at his body language, boo-hoo, he fell forward. I knew it was done. Okay? So words don't lie either. What we know is when somebody is telling you a story, you open it up and say, well, tell me what happened. This is the breakdown of a truthful story. They should have 25% of the content kind of leading up to the story. 50% of it is actually the story of the event that occurred. And you should have 25% as they close, what was the outcome. So how that would look is, if somebody says, I walked into my house and I found my roommate dead, that's off, because that's the story. The beginning part was, well, we all went out partying the night before. We met a couple guys, we got in their car, we went here, we went there, we got back, and then this morning I woke up and so wasn't there. Got it? The very end, too, then they wrap it up and they go, and that's what happened. No, that's not what happened. What happened after that? You know? So this is, if you take this to heart, in any story, 25 leading up, 50% of the guts of what they're saying, and 25% after. Any sort of deviations from this, possible deception. Now, people that are truthful, they speak in past tense memory. They say, I saw, rather than I see. So when you hear them saying, what happened? Well, I see this man, and he was running down the street, and they didn't say, I saw the man running down the street, you know that they're already beginning to fabricate the lie. Because lies always come in present tense. Missing pronouns. When somebody doesn't put them into the equation, there's a good reason for it. When they don't use I, me, or my inside, I went to the store, I went to the cleaners, then I ran over to my friend's house and said goodbye. But if they say, went to the cleaners or went to the store, then stopped by a friend's house, what's missing? I. So order of words are really important too. Who is you have a couple friend that you hang out with, girl and guy or whatever? What's their names? Who are you closest to? Of course, because that's the order of the words. They always put the first one forward first. That tells you that you are closer to Daniel. See, there's all kinds of ways we can trick you, right? So the order of your words are very important. The other thing is they skip over information. You'll see them use words like this. Well, later or later on or afterwards or shortly thereafter or the next thing I know, all they're telling you is I'm jumping over this big hunk of information I don't want you to know. So you have to go back and say, well, when you said later, what did you do right before that? See, you've got to kind of bracket that out. Jodi Arias thought she was pretty clever when she could tell things from beginning to the end. I went on one of the national TV shows and I said, you know what, Ermi, you need to start doing cognitive interviewing and get her to tell the story backwards. Quit trying to get her, because she's had too much time in jail to think about everything chronologically. All right, guess what? The number 3 is a number 1 lying number. Anytime you ever hear somebody say, well, it only happened 3 times, and guys, how many beers did you have? 2, right? That's a number 2 lying number. Okay? So number 3, anytime you hear anything in denominations of 3, 3 o'clock, 3:30, 3 times, anytime you see that, your horn should go up and pay attention. All right, so now we're going to go into, we've got this quick plea and we're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to try to wrap this up, but here's Barry. Let's listen to his plea. Let's go back. Somehow that's not playing.
The mother of 2 disappeared on Mother's Day. A neighbor told the sheriff Suzanne never came home from a bicycle ride. Now searches have located her bicycle and an unspecified personal item. Her husband Barry issued a plea today online.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you. No questions asked. However much they want, I will do whatever it takes to get you back. Honey, I love you. I want you back so bad.
All right. Well, there's so much going on there. It's ridiculous, right? So he's not even clear who he's talking to. Is he talking to? Who's he talking to? He jumps around all the time. Is he talking to the media? He's not even doing it. He did it on his own. Is he talking to try to find his wife? Is he talking to the person that might have abducted her? He doesn't even know who he's talking to. It doesn't flow. He pauses and starts. There's a lack of urgency in his voice. He uses multiple pronouns in here, which is also an indicator. Does not state his love for Suzanne until the what? End. So, and then his voice trails off. Let's look at the voice stress analysis. Here he goes. Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there, see those red blocks? That's deception. If anyone is out there, here we go again. That has you. Voice stress analysis, deception again. When you see that, what happens is when somebody's telling a lie or fabricating, it causes these vocal tremors and causes stressors. And when you see them in wider areas like that, not just up and back down, those are indications of deception. Everywhere through his story, over and over again. So let's just look at real quick how even now, and we know now that people lie, and you can pick it up through their voice, you can pick it up through their body language, and his affect was off. Let's see how the face can tell you things that you never realized.
Mr. Kalin, you got a lot of money for your appearance on Current Affair, didn't you?
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, isn't it true, Mr. Kalin, that you have a book proposal out for about $500,000 right now, don't you?
No.
You don't have a book proposal?
No.
Don't you aren't you represented by the William Morris Agency to write a book?
No.
Haven't you written a book proposal that has been submitted to St. Martin's for publication?
No.
You're not aware of any contract for $500,000 that you have signed?
I know it's out there, but I haven't done that.
You haven't.
Let's see it in slow motion. Let's look at his facial expressions morph. That's coming down in anger, disgust. He does not like Marcia Clark at all. How dare you ask me those questions? So his eyebrows lift up. Look at his chin pop up a little bit. His mouth drops down in surprise. His eyebrows will now come down. His eyes become narrow. His lips will become pressed, and then his nose goes up. Pretty incredible, right? So when I'm reading people, he doesn't look so good there. I've seen him look better. But anyway, I slow everything down and I look at the microseconds and I sync it to what he's saying. Does it match up? Okay, so I'd like to bring back, this is where I'm going to close here. I also, a lot of you heard about the Pulse nightclub murder, right? Well, his dad went on national TV and I found him to be truthful. Let's watch his body language and his facial expressions.
Sometimes I wish the son wasn't born even.
Let's go back. Did you see that, how quickly that happened? He wished he'd never born yet. He was really very angry and disgusted. Look at the jury lab technology. It's picking up his facial expressions, and it matches his word. It happens very quickly.
Sometimes I wish the son wasn't born even.
I wish the son was never born
yet. I did anything possible, send them to school, send them to college, paid for all the expenses, and turned out to be a terrorist.
So he was angry and he felt contempt for his son. He couldn't even believe that was his son. Well, I would like you to meet my two friends, Louis and Angel. Angel, who is on the very left with the plaid, he was shot 6 times. Louis was trampled on that night, and both of them survived. We are ones that now go to Washington and to our capital, and we fight these things. So we're reading body language is an art and a science of all of its own, but my true passion is really helping people solve cases. Thank you. My name is Susan Constantine. I'd like to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, before you go, my husband is in the very back. He has the training class. It is a course 11 hours long. You'll learn how to become a human lie detector, and you get 20% off. The code is CrimeCon 20 off. He's in the back. Thank you. Yes.